Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Comedy Podcast. I am your host, Brian Apprille. You can check out all of our episodes. You can check them out audio on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can get the video versions on Facebook and YouTube. If you have any questions or comments about the episode, feel free to leave them down below in the comments, or you can reach out to me personally if you would like. You can follow my channel, youtube.com/comedybrian, facebook.com/comedybrian, or you can interact with me live one-on-one at twitch.tv/comedybrian when I live stream. We're going to get right into it. This episode is another amazing episode. Another longtime veteran of comedy, just performs all over the globe. He's done everything. He's won everything. Seattle International Comedy Competition, you name it, this man has done it. So I'm very excited to have him here. I haven't seen him in a while. Looking forward to catching up with him. Please welcome Mr. Lamont Ferguson. Lamont, how are you, sir?
Hey, Brian. I'm well, thanks. And yourself?
Doing great, Dan. Doing great. Good. Thanks so much for coming on.
I appreciate it. And there with the intro, it sounds like I've is this goodbye? It sounds like I've defeated comedy. What?
Yes, you have.
I've done.
You've done everything.
I've beaten the boss at everything, every level.
That's right. You just have to start the game over now. Just come up with a new persona, new name, and just start over.
And a higher degree of difficulty. That's what I mean.
Exactly. Exactly. So we've all kind of had that pause with COVID, going a little longer than I think we all anticipated. But how are you holding up with? We were talking a little bit about the online shows and the virtual shows, and how they're not enjoyable.
They're not. They are very stressful. It takes a different mindset to be able to do them. When I was the ones or the two that I've done prior, I treated it as, because I've been doing a show that's kind of a news issue type of show where it's just me and the camera. So therefore, having done that prior to it, I just treated it like that. Matter of fact, I had the script of what the set was going to be right next to the camera and just read as if it was a teleprompter type of deal. But still, it was extremely stressful. And it's just weird. It's very weird. Somehow as comics, we have made comedy more difficult for us and really easy for the audience. I don't think that's how it was supposed to be.
No, it made us more awkward than we already are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting though that at least you can have your script and like notes next to you, when you're doing a virtual show, as opposed to, if you're trying new material, you can have it there. Whereas usually if we're performing stand-up, it's kind of frowned upon to have any notes. So we always, go up just with it in our head.
Yeah. And like I said, I had it right next to the camera lens, but I also told the audience, because once I got to a bottom of a page, I pulled the page up and showed it to them and told them that I'm reading these off of the thing, and then it made it more enjoyable, for me at least.
Nice. One of the things, before we get started, Lamont, one of the things I love about performing with you and what I love about your act is you have very smart humor. You have a great edge to you where you kind of don't care what people think. It's not that you're mean or anything like that, but you have a little bit of that edge of like, you're able to, if someone needs to be told off, like you could tell them off if you wanted to. But you also bring in perspectives that aren't always just like, well, we're all going to get along. You're like, no, some people got to go, and that's one of my favorite things about you. You're such a great pro, and you can sit down on stage and still pull focus. You can stand up on stage, still pull focus. It's just amazing watching you work. So love having you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's the key, and it's just being comfortable within what it is you do. I have no disrespect for the audience, right, but I don't give them the reverence of the idea that that particular audience needs to prove that I'm funny, because they have that type of sense about them where you go up, they don't know who you are, and they're like, okay, well, let's see, we'll decide whether or not this person is funny. But this is like being a doctor, man. We've put in the years, put in the work. Don't question on what my knowledge is of my profession, because I can be an audience member. You can't be a comic. So just sit and watch and go with the ride. It may not be your cup of tea, which is fine. But still, this whole idea that you need to make the decision as to whether or not the person is funny, that's not where it flies in my book. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a valuable lesson for so many people who have no idea. It's like, you try so hard to please the audience, and it should just be, obviously we want them to laugh. We want them to enjoy themselves. But, you want to make sure that you're staying true to who you are and what your voice is.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point.
So let me ask you this. Who inspired you, or what inspired you to start doing stand-up?
Always been funny kid. Started when I was started actually going to a club when I was 17. Wow. But the thing is, I started studying stand-up when I was 8. So when I was a kid, I'm the oldest of 4 kids. But at that time there was only 3 of us. During the summer we're at home. My mom is at home with us, and so to be able to give us something to do, she took us to the library because it's free. So we go to the library, and I found my way into where the albums were, not even cassettes, it was albums at the time. Right. And I found a 5-album set of radio shows from the 1930s and 40s. And I listened to those over and over again, and I was fascinated by the science of what it is that made the people laugh. So I studied Jack Benny, Fred Allen, Jimmy Durante, Abbott Costello, all of those people. I'm an 8-year-old sitting in my room listening to these albums over and over again. So then you fast forward that I was just interested in making people laugh and stuff like that. So I was in a group playing as a musician, playing trumpet, and the directors of that group said, we think, because they spent a lot of time, they go, we think maybe you'd be decent as a stand-up comic. And that's all I needed, was to hear someone who's in show business say, well, maybe you should try this. Right. And so then I did. I just went down to the Comedy Store, wrote my stuff, and that was that. Tried out from there.
Wow. So who were some of your other idols besides that? Were there any stand-up? Did you start to study other more traditional stand-ups?
Yeah, traditional stand-ups was Cosby, as most people did. Seinfeld was big. A guy named Franklin Ajaye. I would say those were the 3, which was Cosby, Seinfeld, Franklin Ajaye. I mean, I listened to Steve Martin, the Wild and Crazy Guy thing, that as far as the stand-up goes, and also Rudy Ray Moore, who was Dolomite. But those were the 4 that I would listen to a lot, and especially on television was Seinfeld. As a kid in high school, I would tape Seinfeld sets off of the television, even before doing stand-up, just because I was fascinated by how he wielded the craft. And then, like I said, Franklin Ajaye. I love Franklin Ajaye.
Excellent. Very cool. Yeah, that's I haven't heard him brought up yet. So that's you get a lot of the Seinfeld, and everyone feels bad about saying Cosby, and it's like, well, don't feel bad. We all loved Cosby. He fooled us all. So he was amazing at what he did, but he was a terrible person, but he fooled us all. So it's it's kind of like, well, there it is. So
you can't ignore that. You can't ignore that it happened.
Yes. So. Yeah, absolutely. So do you remember your first show?
I remember the first few minutes of the first show. I remember the first thing I said, which got a laugh, and then I remember the rest of the set being horrific. So I remember that moment. I remember going to the Comedy Store and being very. I've never been that nervous in my entire life, and I'm not someone who's going to go and talk to people a lot. Like, I like to stay within myself or within my circle of friends and stuff. But going there, it was just me, and I'm a kid in an adult atmosphere, and I don't know anyone there and anything like that. So I went, and there was a table right at the front. You've been to Comedy Store many times. There was a table right by the front door, and there was comics sitting there, and I didn't know what to do. I was about to jump out of my seat. I just sat down at their table and joined their conversation, which is extremely unlike me. And then just being very nervous. And at that time, when you're underage at the Comedy Store, you either had to go up first or second and then leave the building immediately. So I believe I went up first and told the first joke, which was a joke about, they were running ads for the Olympics, and everything about the Olympics, the '84 Olympics, was Beatrice, the official sponsor of the 1984 Olympics. And so I went up, and I guess the first line was something about, oh, I know what you're saying, another black comedian, but I happen to be the official black comedian of the 1984 Olympics. And that was it. And it got a big laugh. And then there was nothing after that, pretty much, is what I remember.
Yeah.
This was all downhill. So,
but that one laugh was enough to hook you, though.
The one laugh was enough for me to go, okay, this may be fine. This, let me just continually go and see what happens.
Yeah, and that early part of the process of a career, just getting up. I mean, how often were you getting up in the beginning, and then how long did it take for things to start to click for you?
I didn't go up very often in the beginning. Like I would go, and then I go the next week, and then every so, and I'm, like I said, I'm a kid. I'm still in school, so every so often I would go up, and then there would be times where, like months would go where I would just not call in and just be involved in other things and not being able. Then there was a point where I would say maybe 2 or 3 years in where I decided I'm going to go up more consistently just to see where I could go. And then the more I went up, the better I felt about it. And then there was a point where I was like, okay, this is what I'll just keep doing. So.
Nice. Yeah, it's do you remember that kind of moment though when you were on stage and think like you started to start getting consistent? And did that happen for you on stage, or was that more of an offstage thing?
I'm still waiting. So anyway,
because in the beginning we always have like the extremes of like, okay, this joke does really well, and then the rest of it bombs, or your shows are you think you killed at that point because that's in your brain. You hear laughter and you're like, oh, I killed, and you go back and listen, you're like, oh, maybe not. But the inconsistency of it, and then at some point you kind of like get into that rhythm of where you go, okay, I'm starting to like feel this and understand, and you start to have that consistency of show after show after show.
Yeah. Well, I do remember because there was a lot of progression that took place and a lot of learning that had to take place. One, being so young, I could never be into the comedy club to understand how live comedy was actually performed. So all I could do was do what my version is of what I saw on television. So I'm a 17-year-old kid, and I'm talking topical and political. I knew nothing about those things, but I knew how to write what was the semblance of a joke of that, but it made no sense coming from a 17-year-old. I'm up there talking about the administration and that James Watt, the Secretary of Interior, he's evil, and it just made no sense coming out of me. And to a point where I remember these moments. I remember listening to that and going, makes no sense. Then I remember coming home and looking at my desk and putting down a blank piece of paper and saying, you start a new set from here, right here, blank piece of paper, write about what you know. And then I sat and I wrote, and this is writing, actually by hand writing at the time, the entire set of things that I knew, which made more sense because they were things about what I experienced as being a kid. So I'm talking about shopping for school clothes with your mom, games you played in elementary school and stuff like that, but not from the perspective of being a kid, but from the perspective of having had done that. And that started to connect with the people because they all had experienced that. And then the sets got to be more consistent once I started writing about what I knew, as opposed to, oh, well, I heard a comic talk about this, so I'll talk about that type of deal. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do my whole set on fracking. No idea what's going on. Yeah. So what is your writing process? I'm curious when you're starting.
It's changed throughout, but the principle of what it is has remained the same. Because once, like, there are many comics I know quite a few that are very disciplined. They will sit down. They go, hey, from 3 o'clock till 4 o'clock every day, I'm going to sit down and write. I can't do that. I can't. What I have noticed is that the less distractions I have, the more the valve is open for me to be creative. So early on, I realized that I was very creative in writing while I was on the road. Of course, because you have nothing else. It's just you waiting for that hour of the show that takes place at night. And the other time is just traveling. So therefore, I've found out that when the valve is open, it's open. And when it's not, don't force it, because when it's open, you can just write, and then just kind of figure it out from there. So that's kind of what I do, is that I will sit down. If I start feeling, I go, okay, good, let's go, and then start writing and hammering stuff out to be able to figure out what the particular piece is, or a joke or something like that. But usually it's when there's no distractions, because that's when it works best.
Absolutely. I forgot to ask this already. Is there a particular comic, either famous or not so famous, that people would know that makes you laugh, or what makes you laugh? What type of humor makes you laugh?
You know what? I'm a little different, because for the most part, just about every comic makes me laugh. I've done this for nearly 40 years. And one of the things to me that is interesting is when I see a comic who's done it, not even like 20 years, and they have the "I'm over" comedy type of thing. And I'm like, I could sit in a club every night if I could and watch open mics just to watch the craft being performed, whether it's something that I already know that is just being reinforced, or just done in a different way, like, oh, this is the 2020 way of doing that particular type of deal. But I'm still fascinated by it, and I still enjoy it. And most comics I enjoy. There's, I like all the names, the regular names, Rock and Chappelle and Bill Burr, and the people that maybe people don't know but are kind of big in the biz. Jeremy Hotz makes me laugh. Alonzo Bowden, who's a good friend. Karen Rontowski. I love the craft, and I love comedy done correctly. So
well, that's the key, done correctly.
Done
fact, to me, the idea of sitting in an open mic every night is just not enjoyable, just because if I guess it's because if it's open micers, and they're just talking about body parts and body fluids and whatever, and just like, okay, we've heard all that. But if it were, like if it's established comics working on new bits and that sort of thing, then to me that's much more interesting to watch than
Well, I love hosting open mics, because that to me is the most fascinating thing, is to watch the thought process of particular comics who don't really know exactly how it is, and so that when somebody does show promise, they stand out a little bit more. But to me, I enjoy that part, because I enjoy going up and commenting on maybe the absurdity of what the writing process is of what we just saw, and not in a manner where I'm making fun of that person, but just making fun of the particular bit. And a lot of times the comments will go, "Oh, thanks, I didn't realize that." And I'm like, yeah, we're all seeing that. That's why the reaction in the room was the reaction in the room. So that part I enjoy as well. It's a little helping and funny.
Well, because you're giving a little bit of help, like you said, and you're trying to keep the audience engaged. So what was the best piece of advice you received about comedy?
It's funny, because what was the best piece of advice I received?
Or was there something that really stuck out that like changed something you did? Or
no, I think it was, for me, and I don't even know if this was something that I came up with or something that I had heard, but it's just the idea of having the same respect for the craft of comedy as a fireman does for fire. I guess that's the best way to put it. Because a fireman will tell you everything that they know about fire, which is absolutely fascinating that they know about fire. But they will also tell you that as much as I know about it, I cannot control it. And that's the same thing with comedy. As much as I know about it, I know for a fact that it is elusive, to the fact where I can't control it, to the point where I say, "Oh, where's the room? Oh, it doesn't matter. I will walk up there and kill." That's not going to be the case, but it could be 99.9%. That 1/10 is still enough to know I don't control it.
Yeah, that's crazy. And those shows, it's amazing that, like you said, those shows still exist, even though you've been doing it almost 40 years. You think, I've seen everything, I've done everything, which I guess leads me into my next question. What is the worst show that you've ever had? These are always fun.
It's funny because I was on the show and we were talking about this, and I most of the time with comics, the worst show that you've had, we always put it into early stages. Like no matter how long you've done it, if you go, what's the worst show you ever had? The first thing that pops in your mind is, oh, I did this show and you were early on. It was early on in your career that you did it. And it's because it gets measured. The further along you go, it gets measured up against better shows and better knowledge. So even the fact of me saying, because when's the last time I said, I'd say the last time I had a set that was not enjoyable was probably 2 months ago or whenever it was. I guess we've been doing this for 4 months, the quarantine. So prior to this, let's see, it's in February on a ship where I didn't enjoy the show, but the show wasn't bad because you listen to the people and go, no, that was good. But now you're measuring it against other things. But still, the worst show, early on, I don't know when it was, I was at the Naval Recruiting Center or a Naval Training Center in San Diego, NTC in San Diego, did a show there, and it was horrific. They wanted nothing to do with anything I had to say at all. And that always, for now, it will always stand out as being the worst show that I've ever had.
Wow. Was it just like set up poorly, or was it just they weren't digging you, or?
They just didn't dig me. They just didn't get me at all. And I don't know what it was that I was doing at the time, because no matter what, I switched gears so many times in that set too. Granted, I was very young, so I didn't have many gears to switch to, but I was like, okay, well, maybe this, a little more edge, but even edge to me at that point wasn't really edgy. And, but it just didn't go. It was just horrible. I think from the very beginning was the problem, because this was the intro. The guy goes, ladies and gentlemen, Lamont the comedian. Like, yeah, that's not going to go well. When you're introduced by your occupation, that's not going to be going well at all.
That's funny. So if you could take the listeners and the viewers through, what goes through your mind as you, like when you walk into a room and you go, uh-oh, this probably isn't going to go well. What goes through your mind as during a set when it's just not hitting?
Well, in the set or when you walk into the room? Because there are times where you like I do a lot of recon when I'm walking to a room to see what's going to happen in the room, and to have the luxury of not going up first. It happens when you're in that set and doing it. It's just a lot of thinking of, okay, well, maybe I'll switch this. Maybe I'll go to this. How about I change this? How about there's more thinking than there is talking actually that's going on while you're on stage doing that thing, because you're trying for everything in your head. You're like, let me grasp here. And then you're also listening to where there might be a little bit of a pulse. You go, okay, well, there's something there. Now let me mine down that particular thing. And then if all else fails, then you try to go to the audience. But if they don't like you, then they're just not going to talk to you. And then there's nothing you can do.
Then you just go, well, it's practice mode. And you just switch into just do the rest of your set and get your check.
Yeah.
So I'm curious by that because we all kind of have pre-show rituals or whatever. I do a lot of certain things when I go into a room just to kind of scout it out. What do you walk into what do you look at when you first go into a room? Maybe somewhere you haven't played before.
Obviously, the setup is what you're looking at, and what I'm listening to from the other comics prior to me going up is what they're listening to, or what the audience is laughing at. Sorry, listening to what the audience is laughing at, what they're reacting to, and then there are times where if something strikes me as being odd, I will remember it, and I'll maybe even write it down. There are times I've gone up on the show and go at the end and say, I've got some things to discuss from what we've seen. And I just have a list in my hand, and I just start going down the list. And like I said, I guess I'm poking fun of the situation. Not that I never attack the individual, but I talk about the situation, about the idea that what are we doing? How are we laughing? We're laughing at this. What are we thinking that we're laughing at? With this particular thing. So that's kind of my approach. Try to be in the moment. Try to be in the now. To be a performer as well as an observer. To where people go, yeah, he's kind of right. That was a weird moment that took place.
Yeah, one I know that happens a few times. Sometimes I'll be in a show and someone else with some sort of medical issue or whatever will go on, and then somebody will come on and just be like, "This is the medical issue show. We got a guy who can't smile over here, and we got this guy can't walk, and this guy can do this." And again, it's not a mean. Not a mean thing. It's just observing and pointing out what's going on in the room, and I think people appreciate that and they laugh.
It's very true.
Which is always great. So tagging on to that question, where is the weirdest place you've ever performed?
I would say most of those would probably be in Canada, but it'd be weird for us, but not weird for Canada. That's the thing, because there are a lot of times where you're in a lodge that's in the middle of the forest, and it seems weird, but then when you get in there, it's just a bunch of people that are eager and willing to see comedy, but the trek to get there was just very, very odd. So other than the odd things of doing stuff in people's houses here in the States, which there's no reason for that. There's no reason for anyone to go, let's bring the comic to our house. Because first of all, you're sitting there, you're performing in your sock-footed self. That makes no sense. And it's weird. It's their comfort zone because they're in a house and you're the one out of your element, which makes no sense at all.
Yeah, and there's usually no mic or no lights or
no mic, no lights, and I don't know why. I don't know. Well, I guess why is because some comics said yes. That's why that they continually do it, but it shouldn't be done. Yeah, unless you can replicate what you see in a comedy club, then don't try to do it.
Right. That's when they always go, "Oh, you could just roast everybody if you want." And you're like, "I don't know anybody."
Right. Yeah, exactly. I've just rolled into it. I guess, you know what? Now I come to think of it, I would have to say the weirdest gig ever would be this. I did a corporate event for Cole Plumbing. Is that a thing? Cole or Kohler? I guess they're both the same. They're not the same, but those are two entities. It was one of those two. So here's what they decided. They were having a corporate event in downtown San Diego in a bunch of different locations, bunch of different restaurants. Whomever thought this was a brilliant idea, they go, here's what you guys will do. We will spring you in to the restaurant, to the table where his employees are, and you'll just start telling jokes. Only for a brief moment in time. So it's like 5-minute bursts of sets. And then you leave and go to the next thing. And the whole thing was for them to figure out what was going on. The employees like, this makes no introduction, no idea that the audience who's there knows that a comic is coming, and you've just sprung comedy on them for 5 minutes at a time, and then you move on. That was the oddest gig that I've ever done. Yeah, don't think of it.
And surprise comedy just works so well, well. When people are not expecting it.
During the best scenario, it is not 100%.
We are talking with Lamont Ferguson, comedian extraordinaire. You can check out his website at lamontferguson.com. That's LamontFerguson.com. You can also follow Lamont on Instagram and Twitter at TV Funny Man. That's at TV Funny Man. That is Lamont Ferguson, who also actually has a thing we'll talk about a little bit more too. He's a program on YouTube that you're doing, a new series on YouTube called the Now Normal with Lamont Ferguson on YouTube. Actually, if you want to just tell us about that real quick, we can talk about that now.
It was born out of boredom because, like you said, we didn't think this was going to last this long. Yeah. We didn't. And I thought, well, here's an idea. I'll just start doing just a regular type of show where I talk about news events and stuff, but a longer format, almost a kind of a daily show, John Oliver type of thing, but with my spin that it makes it different because it's me type of deal on it, and do some jokes and stuff here and there. And so I started doing that, and then I did 4 episodes of it. And then I realized that this thing is not ending. And now it's a point of me getting motivated to do the next episodes of the particular show. But it's been fun. It was a fun little thing that I've done. So it takes up some time and keeps me productive and creative.
That's really what this is all about. That's how this whole thing gets started. I was like,
the worst thing is that you're fighting the news cycle, because that's the thing about it. And with this and with Trump, the news cycle is crazy, because something that crazy happened, a couple of days ago is done by Friday. And then you're like, oh, I wrote all this stuff on it. Well, nobody remembers. No one remembers it at all. So yeah, that's the most frustrating thing about it.
Well, a lot of people will say that too. They'll be like, oh, you must have like a gold mine with all the politics and stuff going on and with Trump and everything. And you say no, because by the time I even craft something and get it shaped to where it would be good and right, like that's totally old news. And there's something brand new. So, I mean, it's great for like, Conan and those, Fallon and those guys. It's great for them.
Done on that night. Yeah, it is. Although I have learned a lot, because you remember the West Coast funnies and that type of deal of writing those news jokes, is that if you watch the news all the time, you're very far ahead of the general public news cycle. So there's two different things going on. There's the news cycle, which just moves quickly, but then there's the public's knowledge and awareness of the news cycle, which has a lag of sometimes about a week. So you have to figure out where that spot is that you can jump in to still be able to talk about something that took place, because the majority of people have just heard about it. And to that point, it's challenging and interesting, but it's a beast. It's a different animal.
Yeah, definitely. And you talked a little bit about Canada. Now you do a lot of your shows up in Canada. What is it like performing in Canada? How did you get started performing in Canada? What's that experience been for you?
I do a lot, or did a lot back when stand-up was a thing. I did a lot up in Canada. I started because I was doing some one-nighter, Tribble type one-nighters, and a guy who I was working with said, "Hey, have you ever worked up in Canada?" And I said, "No, I hadn't." And he goes, "Well, I got some contacts of a guy," and he shared that with me, and then I started going, and it just became a nice fit for what it is I was doing. And I don't know when that was. That was early 90s as I started going up there and working. And I joke on the fact, even here in the States, I joke on the fact about me working in Canada and saying that it's because Canadians are smarter than Americans. I don't say that, but I allude to that, and people go along with it. That's not the case. We're a smart country. You could not be what we are without being an intelligent, smart country. But the difference is, and the problem is, Americans have a slave mentality to television. We cannot get enough of it. We will watch it, and what that does is it lowers your attention span, because they're constantly throwing things at you because that's what you need. Canadians have winter 8 months out of the year. So when the weather is nice, they aren't going to sit inside and watch TV. They're going to go outside. They're going to go to the cabin. They're going to go to the mountains. They're going to spend time outside, take a walk. That lengthens your attention span. So when I go to Canada, and any comic goes to Canada, they can listen to a story from beginning to end without there being a trigger in their head that goes, okay, where's this going? Where's it? What are you doing? What's going on? This is taking too long. That's American. What's going on? What's taking on? What? I don't know if you've seen this recently, but this happened, I don't know, about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. They started putting televisions at the gas pump, to where when you start filling up, it'll just run entertainment. We can't be trusted with the 2.5 minutes with our own thoughts of pumping gas that we need to have this entertainment. That's the difference. That is the difference of being American and Canadian, that we constantly need to be just bombarded with entertainment and stuff, that you can never take a point where you just go, can I just have my thoughts? Can I just relax and just be?
Right. Yeah, just exist. And what's funny too about those is then they're like, be sure and follow GSTV on Twitter. Like, why would I follow a gas station entertainment on Twitter? Like, why?
Yeah.
What am I gonna? Oh, look, they're starting now. Let me go to Exxon and check it out. Like, it's crazy. It's so stupid. I never understood that. Now, also, Canada has some different setups as far as like the way they run shows. Sometimes the headliners they'll do 2 shows at once, and
they run the shows the right way. It's what they do. They run the shows the exact right way, and it makes and if you talk like I'm going to talk about it and say it, and then the viewers will go, yeah, that makes sense. So what it is that the headliners are usually, or not even usually, but well, yeah, I guess usually, because sometimes there are comics that are strong enough to host. But more times than not, the headliners are the MCs and hosts of the show in Canada. So if I go up, I'll do 2 weeks at a particular club. I will host the first week. I will headline the second week. So the first week I'm up there, I'll just do my time and then just bring up people, the 2 comics on the show and then the headliner, and then that'll be the show. The next time I'll go up and headline. Because emceeing and hosting has such a huge responsibility. Yet in the States, we give it to the least experienced person on the show. That makes no sense. That's the person that carries everything. They don't have to be the funniest person, but they are doing most of the heavy lifting on the show, and we're giving it to the least experienced person in the lineup to be able to carry that. And so they don't do it that way in Canada. It's the most experienced person. You're doing the show, and it works out much better. The other difference is checks at the end of the show, not during the headliner set. At the end of the show, when the show is over, boom, we're dropping. If I'm emceeing, I go up, and as I'm going up after the headliner is done, I will say, okay, right now they're dropping the checks on your table. That's when it's done. And yes, 1 or 2 people, drunken idiots, may run out, but it's not something that goes on all the time. If during a week, maybe there'll be 1, probably 0. But it's so weird that in America we have this idea that, oh no, because if we let them go, they're going to run out. There'll be like 150 people all running out, not wanting to pay. Okay.
They do that at restaurants, like they don't.
Yeah.
Like, there you go. They bring it at the end. You want anything else? Here you go.
Yeah.
Why can't they just incorporate that?
Because it does screw up the show, and it's so noticeable. When you've done both places, it's so noticeable as far as that attention span drop off of people as they're looking at the check, because you're closing the show, you don't know when it's going to happen. And if your set is not set in stone to where it's always the same, there have been many times where I'm talking and everything's going great. Then all of a sudden I go, oh, I didn't realize they had dropped the checks. This is all in my head. Maybe I should have just waited or just not gotten into this piece where I'm so into it, where I'm really trying to sell it, as opposed to just walking through. But it's very annoying. Unsettling.
So I always like to ask, headliners, what do you do when you during check drop? Some people just barrel right through it. Some people go into crowd work. What is your kind of method?
I'm never ready for it. So if I'm ready for it, I'll just wait. I will. I'll just wait. But if I'm not ready for it, and then that realization comes on, then you can feel that I just start backing down from the bit. And because in my head, I was like, you should have known better, because you should have paid more attention to what was going on in the room. But I'll start dialing it down. There are times where you're into a bit and you're selling it. And then there's times where you just go, I'm just going to say the words are funny as they are. So I'm just going to say the words and not put pressure on it. It's the same type of deal when I tell comics sometimes about selling a bit that you can understate it. And the results will still be the same. Where if you deliver a bit to where it's almost an aside, as if it's like as a matter of fact type of delivery, but it still gets a laugh, then there's no pressure on it. But if you get ready to go like, oh man, here comes the joke, and then it just goes flat, well, now everyone sees that you were trying a joke and it didn't work. So there's 2 different ways to doing that. So I will just go to the undersell whenever the checks drop and just kind of go, well, I'm just talking anyway.
Yeah, that's good. And then there's no, they don't know anyway.
Yeah, they won't know.
if it hits, you're a genius, and if not, that's how it's supposed to be anyway. So
right,
we're just
exactly.
chilling time. Sometimes I tell them it's a math exam. They have 2 minutes to complete their test, and yeah, I hate it because I don't really like talking to the audience. That's just
Right.
kind of the way I was brought up in comedy was
Mhm.
no crowd work.
Yep.
So I never developed that skill as much as I probably should have, but I
Right.
also like just going and doing my thing and going home. So when that happens, I'm like, we'll just take the hit and we'll just keep marching
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is you talked about, talking to some young comics, what's the biggest, or what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see young comics make?
Things have changed so differently because it used to be don't do anything before you were ready. But there are no repercussions for that anymore, and it's not been that way for quite a while.
Right.
So I don't really know what any of the mistakes that anyone, because that was the biggest mistake, was doing something or attempting to do something before you were ready, because it would come back to the point where if you went to a club and said, I'm a feature act, middle act, whatever it is, and you really couldn't do it, that word would get around, and then you wouldn't be able to work for a bit of time, as it you'd have to go. It's almost like going back to the beginning and starting over again. But I don't think that doesn't apply anymore, because one, the clubs don't communicate with each other and they don't care, and most of the headliners are bringing their own people in. So it doesn't matter if that comic is not funny. They're almost part of the package as far as the headliner, because that headliner is the person that's filling your seats.
Right.
So then you just have to do what it is that they're doing. I guess in general, I would say the same things over to comics what to do, as far as either audio record or videotape your sets so that you know what's going on, so you can see what's it, because going off of memory or whatever it is not helpful. But to be able to see what it is, especially if somebody gave you a tip afterwards, then you can go back and see exactly where it is that they're talking about to apply that thing. But as far as mistakes comics make, I don't know. They're the same. I don't know if there are any mistakes anymore. Like you said, and you're saying this, and you don't have the experience that I have, and you're saying it, and I would say the same thing. Comics that go up and talk about bodily function, that's been going on forever. So there's no way to stop it.
Right.
It is what they do. So
absolutely. So you talk about the craft of comedy, and there's so many people that don't understand the psychology. A lot of comics don't quite understand that psychology yet. How did that kind of get wrapped into your act, or I guess maybe what are some of your thoughts on crowd psychology and comedy psychology? Some things that people can look out for.
There's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, that's my background. My background is psychology. So I am very interested and fascinated by the human behavior, and so therefore I utilize a lot of it within. I guess some of the things that I do on stage, and there are times where I'll pass some of this stuff along to comics, but there's stuff that's just kind of just pertains to me. One of the things I'll say that I pass on to comics about is hosting, because I absolutely love hosting shows. Is your job is not to be funny. Your job is to be mildly amusing and welcoming. Is really more is that you got to look at yourself as being an extension of the greeting of the club itself. Treat the club like an entity, and that you are welcoming to the audience members, and say, hey, just be relaxed, is what's going to happen on the show. You being funny is a bonus, because you just have to be likable, mildly amusing, and welcoming to the audience as the MC. So a lot of times I will always say my next guest. So I treat it like it's a talk show. I treat it like it's my show. I go, my next guest on the show, and that makes everyone feel well. And the fact that the audience goes, okay, we like this. We like this thing that it's his show, and these are the guests on the show. Because as great as the guests are, the host still gets the credit for it. It don't matter whether or not Jimmy Fallon or Conan are funny, but if you had two amazing guests on that show, people go, man, that was the best show we ever saw. Well, that man, did you see Conan last night? It was fantastic. What did Conan do? I don't know, but so-and-so was on the show. That's how it works on that. And so it's the same thing with that. As far as the psychology for me is, I mentioned a little bit of it earlier. It's about the audience with this idea of the control of them saying that we'll decide whether or not this person's funny. I disarm them of their sense of control in the beginning. I don't rush onto the stage. I take my time onto the stage. Whether or not they keep applauding, because that's an old stock joke as to where the applause dies down and the comic goes, thanks for keeping it going until I got to the stage. That doesn't matter to me. I will take my time getting to the stage because it puts the audience off balance. Because, like I said, they show up with the idea, well, we'll decide. Let's see if this person's funny. And then the person takes their time getting to the stage. You're like, well, whoa. Who is this that thinks that they have to be able to take the time to come to? We're here to decide whether or not. And then it makes them realize that, no, you got to follow me. You have to follow. This is my show. You have to follow me. The example I give is, you think that rock concerts or any concert could not start on time? Oh, they all could start on time. The band is there. They're in the back. The reason they make you wait is to let you know that they are not there for you. You are there for them. That's why they don't start on time. And that's one of the main psychology things that I utilize on stage. It's just it's almost like you got to break the wild horse right up front to go, no, I'm in charge. Just follow me.
That's a really interesting way of doing that. Because usually, like for me anyway, what I like to do is just come out and just go, okay, you guys are better, you guys are better, you guys are better than me. And then you just see it switch over time. Because Woody Allen used to do that all the time. And he would just disarm everybody that way. I'm no threat, I'm no fear, whatever. And then they sit there and they feel all superior. And then all of a sudden, it just slowly switches back. And then at the end, right there in his hand. And it's just such a joy to watch, just to see that transformation happen. But your approach is really great. That's a great approach. And
one of the other things it also establishes is that it makes it so that it doesn't matter what was on stage prior to me. Because me taking my time to go, like when I'm closing shows at a club and stuff, I treat every show almost like it's a little mini special. So there'll be music or whatever it is that comes up, even if the other comics didn't use any music, for me to come up, because it washes the stage. No matter what that person was doing prior to me, that moment of silence and a blank stage and that uncertainty in the room makes them forget about what it is they saw. And now they have to be locked in on what the next performance is. Because a lot of times they like to, it's that ride the wave thing. If you're on a show where there's a whole bunch and it's just a showcase, you guys are doing the small sets, then you want to ride the wave of the previous comic to do stuff. But if you're closing out, I don't need you to do whatever it is you do, because I'm going to do what I do. And it just makes the audience, like I said, washes the stage, cleanses everything, and then we start over from here.
Nice. I like that. That's some good advice. So if you're listening, take notes, because that's really good advice. So I guess we go. One of the things I noticed too about you is you always tend to dress really nicely on stage. You're always, either you got the hat, you got the scarf, you got you're always generally looking good. What was the thought process behind how you dress on stage?
I don't know. I mean, it's just the idea that it's a performance. It's there's a couple of things about it. It's about respect for the audience. My presentation of respect for the audience. Not everyone can do what it is they want to, but this is my thing, is my presentation of respect, of saying that you came out to see me, or you came out to a show. If you have kids, you got a sitter. This may have been something that was planned on your calendar for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to dress as if there was a show, the respect for the audience, to show that, hey, look, I appreciate it and I care about it. I can't think of a time where I didn't dress up. There are times, like if I pop into a club, I'll not dress up if I'm just popping in and doing some stuff. But it's just that's been the choice of just the respect, and I like it. I like the look of it. I like the idea of that it's nattily dressed, that type of thing.
Mhm. Well, absolutely. It's just one of those things that, again, having that respect for yourself and for the audience that, they're putting this time in. You put the time in that
Right.
you're going to treat them with respect and as well, so that they feel like they matter, which is
Yeah,
important.
that this is a thing. It's not just
Yeah,
I didn't roll out and just gonna okay. Let me tell you, yeah.
right. So a couple more questions, then we'll get into your organization. Have you had? We all have these crazy audience interaction stories. Is there a particular audience story that sticks out with you, whether you were on stage or off of some funny, chaotic thing, or just something somebody said, or
Yeah, the audience stuff is always crazy. Yeah, I don't know. There have been different types of either approaches to it because in the early days back at the store, when we'd fill all those days when the local comics had access to 5 of the 7 days at the Comedy Store. So Mitzi would send her pros down on Friday and Saturday, but all the other days were us. And those lineups were long. You were at the store. Those lineups were just long nights, and so sometimes I'd go up at the end of the night, and I didn't want to go into material because of who knows, they saw all these different things, and I didn't know where to start. So I'd start by just saying, what have we seen tonight? What have we covered tonight? And then that just opens it up for the audience to start talking about it and yelling up. And then it's just the idea of controlling it, of just making sure that you're able to keep it controlled and stuff like that. And those are usually some of the wildest things, but nothing that I really remember in particular. But that was just the way that I would go up as far as to control this audience mass. And then once I heard all the stuff they did, then as they're talking, I go, okay, so they haven't talked about this, they haven't talked about this, and then I go into what my stuff is and close out the show. But as far as wild stuff that I've seen, who knows? As far as to be able to pinpoint anything of one thing, I've not seen anybody get attacked on stage, so that's a good thing. But they are always crazy because of the fact that comfortability of an audience member to either yell up during a performance is mind-boggling to me on the idea that they feel that comfortable. Never anywhere else. No one yells up during the singer. No one yells up during the play. No one yells up during anything else but stand-up comedy. And then the whole idea where they, at the end of the show, where I'm sure you've heard, where they go, I was helping you. Or, yeah, I thought I'd help you out. Alonzo Bowden had the best line I've ever heard about that. Someone said they were helping, and Lonzo said, he goes, that's okay. He goes, don't worry, I can do this on my own because I can't always count on you being here. I didn't know that you were going to be here tonight, so I came prepared with my own stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's the funniest. That's the best one.
That is really good. Yeah, it's amazing how many people think that they can, or even just heckle, because there's the types of heckle where they're trying to help,
Right.
And then there's the mean-spirited hecklers. How do you handle hecklers, out of curiosity?
It depends, like you were saying. It depends on the type. If they're people that are trying to help, then I will talk to them and just see where they're going with it and see what exactly it is they're talking. Because sometimes they do make me laugh. Sometimes I will acknowledge and just go, that was kind of funny. That made me laugh. That was funny. And then just move on. The mean-spirited ones, I just have no patience for. I don't. I have no, because, what they want to go, oh, get them, and then you burn it. I'm like, no, I don't. I've got stuff, and I prepared this stuff, and this is not part of this stuff. And I will just be mean. I will just be mean and angry. The whole objective is to get them to cry and leave the room. That is the whole thing about it, because I don't have time for the whole, oh, look how funny I am compared to you. Like, no, I don't. Yeah. I don't have time for it.
I never understood why people sit there and go, this is going to be a good, you are going to get destroyed unless you're going up against someone who is not, comfortable in it or has been doing it a very short time. You go against the seasoned headliner, you're not winning. They have the mic.
That is the point, though. They have the mic. The last time I was out in Toronto, which I love Toronto, it's one of my favorite cities in Canada to perform at, there were some weird young people, and a guy stood up in the middle, and I'd already been talking to him, but just kind of just whatever the little friendly banter was. And he stands. I know what I was doing. I was asking whether people were celebrating anything because someone hadn't done it. The MC hadn't done it. And so I'm going along, and then he stands up. I've already passed him. He stands up with his group, and he goes, I got something. I go, really? Because we've already passed by you. And he goes, no, really. I go, do you really have something? He goes, yeah. He goes, let's celebrate the anniversary of something about my hairline, about me not having hair. And it was a weird moment where it wasn't funny and it wasn't anything in the room. It was just awkward. It felt awkward for everyone involved type of deal. And I just turned that into a thing where, because it's Canada, I said that probably is the whitest thing I've ever heard. See, because for white guys, it's a horrible thing for you to lose your hair. I have hair. I choose to shave my head. Do you understand the difference on how that is? For you, that's a nightmare. For us, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for us. But yeah, it was a weird thing where they want that moment to draw attention to themselves, and then it doesn't go the way that they want.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, we are talking with Lamont Ferguson. You can follow him on Instagram and Twitter at TV Funnyman. At TV Funnyman, Instagram and Twitter. You can also check out his website at lamontferguson.com. You also have a Dry Bar comedy special out there. I don't know the link of that, but Dry Bar comedy.
Oh yeah, that is
slash Lamont, most likely.
Yeah, something. That's funny because we talk about that, about the idea that I got just good for you and congrats on your Dry Bar thing, and I'm sure it'll do well. I was in the early stages of Dry Bar when they really didn't understand how to market stuff. So all these comics I hear, they're like, "Oh, I made money." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm never going to see money because this was the early stages of Dry Bar where they didn't really know they were doing. All I end up is I have a really nice tape of a clean set, is what it is."
There you go.
Yeah. So you know what? Here's what happened during mine. We talked about earlier when you said that it was awkward on the first one and then trying to get it. So here's what happened on mine. I had a set design because the name of the special is called You Had All Day. So I had all these strategic callbacks set up to where that was going to be the end. The last callback was that line of the special. One, I forgot to do that line. I forgot to do the setup line of it. So when I got to the end on the first show, no one knew what the hell I was talking about. The second thing is the first 10 minutes of the set, which were going okay, then you started hearing bleed in of like a radio throughout the speaker system, like a bleed in of cutting in and out. It was almost like someone taking orders at somewhere or something like that. And then we realized that, there's something wrong with the frequency and it's getting a bleed in from something else. Then the guy comes up in the middle and switches mics on me. And he goes, "Yeah, it'll be fine. Just go from there." Well, I had a black mic and then I had a silver mic. And then I said, "You think they're not going to notice that the mic changed colors in the middle?" So the whole first taping was just a wash of just nonsense is what it was. Right. And then the second taping, everything clicked and everything was fine. But it was funny. So there was no way that they could edit because, they have you film 2 shows. They film so they can splice it. There was no way they could edit the first one into the second one. We had to take the second one just as it was. Fortunately, it came out how it was supposed to. So
that's funny because that puts a lot of pressure on at that point because you go, well, there was that shot, now I got to nail everything on this one. And most people don't realize when these comedians, they see these Netflix specials or whatever, it's 4 or 5 shows over the course of a weekend. They wear the same outfit and, tell the same jokes and they can edit in between and so that they get the best thing. But if you're doing like a one shot, then, you better have a great set.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to check out that, you can check that out on Dry Bar. But otherwise, you can check them out at lamontferguson.com, on Instagram and Twitter at TV Funnyman. And you can also check out the Now Normal show on YouTube. And today we're going to spotlight an organization that you brought up, Lamont. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the American Stroke Association.
American Stroke Association, it's kind of a big deal. The older I get, the more it means to me because I feel like it's something looming. I know so many comics and so many friends who have been afflicted by stroke. And it is, I believe it's the 5th leading cause of death in America. And there's not really many warning signs about it, which makes it so scary, because a friend of mine, perfectly healthy, worked out like crazy, and then all of a sudden hit by a stroke. So it is scary, very, very scary. So that's kind of something I've paid attention to, and see what it is that they're doing as far as educating and helping folks to know what it is and what's going on.
Absolutely, and it's a great organization, great cause. You can check them out on Facebook at American Heart, or you can check them out on Twitter at American_Heart, the American Stroke Association. You can also check out their website, www.stroke.org. That's www.stroke.org. And Lamont, we're gonna wrap up, but I just want to say thank you again for coming out and talking with me today. Good to catch up with you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And again, for those of you who are want to check us out, you can check us out on Facebook at Uncommon Comedy. Uncommon Comedy, on Instagram at Uncommon Comedy Tour. YouTube.
This is your thing, right? This is
my thing now. Yeah, Uncommon Comedy Podcast. And again, at Comedy Brian, all over the internet. You can find me there. But again, thank you again to Lamont for coming out, and really enjoyed talking to you. Let's do this again soon.